Hi there, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome to those that are currently here in the live premiere. Maybe there'll be a couple more people watching than last night's, just because of the title and the theme topic of this video, but it is a valid one, a retrospective look and an analysis on the significance of whether or not if trail cameras were installed at Dylan Round's property, his farm, his trailer. Would it have led to a different outcome by now? Would it have led to Dylan being found or a new twist and turn lead in the case? And it does originate from Jim Terry himself, because he's supposedly the one that came out with the idea about putting cameras out there. Family supposedly denied it. I'm just going to tell the story today of, the significance of the gun key fob, how that branched off in two different pathways of what actually played out or what supposedly played out, and how does it link to the trail cameras. If you're hypothesizing if they were installed, what would it have shown? The angling, he was there at a time, a place, nighttime, morning time. It's going to be all pieced together, so don't go anywhere today, because by the end of the video I'll give you my conclusion and end thoughts on the matter, whether it would have been significant or not. So make sure to stick around. I said welcome to those who are currently here in the live premiere and those joining slowly. Feel free to share your thoughts and opinions in the live chat box, and if you do want to elaborate, add on some additional thoughts or questions, list them down below in the comment section. Also down below will be pinned comment by me for additional links if you wish to check them out, okay? As well, if you'd like to check out last night's video, maybe you missed out on it, don't worry. Top right corner of the screen, eye symbol, click on that, and then it'll give you like a drop down menu of different videos and playlist to catch up on. So you can do that. And also down below in the description of this video, there should be the videos there accessible as well. So you've got the options if you want to watch them. So we're just going to go through it bit by bit today. Regroup on the story, what initially or supposedly happened, the significance of the outcome not truly happening and the significance of the family rejecting a certain idea, and Jim Terry too. We don't need to look at any comments because there weren't really any last time round. But, for those that have been, I don't know, on and off watching and leaving or not been consistently around, just as a recap, what I've recently been doing was doing the analysis, almost so the research, the back history, criminal history, past of Kevin Bibbins, and contrasting, comparing to the likes of James Brenner. Some interesting links found with time, and getting it up with the court documents as proof, right? Because I know some people really are obsessed with proof and physical evidence or visual evidence, so that's why we did that. But all of a sudden, not as many people are interested. Ooh, what a shame. Isn't that typical though? Because when you want to go hard and when you want to go deep, all of a sudden people back off. As said, stamina war at times. But the interesting thing was, and I just want to highlight it because it's a very interesting observation, more people tuned in when we looked at the breaking news, the latest post by Candice Cooley and supposed new evidence found, which is very interesting in general, and I can understand why people would look into it, right? But the reason why I find it interesting is, over time, there was a fair amount of people that wouldn't give a second look at the likes of Candice Cooley or police reports and news updates, even though it's more official and it's people directly in the case, because of where it's coming from and the general public. A fair few don't trust the likes of Candice Cooley or the police or both, and yet now they tune in all of a sudden. That's what I find very interesting. It's like people only tune in now to the news and the facts about the Dylan Rounds case, such as on my channel. And some people could say that's quite laughable and think, duh. Well, it just goes to show people are interested in the facts, the story, and not this wishy-washy, drawn-out analysis with a monotone voice by this one individual. You could think that. It's just ironic because it was the complete opposite in the past, when people wouldn't bat an eyelid at the supposed true news, the real news from the inside case, because it wasn't good enough for people and many were doubtful. But because there's been a long strain of silence, a form of desperation probably has built within people. So when there is official news by the right type of people, all those that were cautious, or most that were cautious, are now listening because they've got nothing else to listen to. So sometimes desperation can change people's behaviour. And that could link on to the first part of this video talk, because let's give a backstory. Was there desperation with the grandparents in hiring Jim Terry? Were the grandparents even aware of who Jim Terry was at the time and the supposed tainted history because of other families having arguably negative encounters? Probably not. I'd say at a time and a place where things have happened so quickly, grandparents, Dylan Rounds, they want Dylan found as soon as possible. The clock is ticking. Well, it was then, right? And the longer things go on for, the longer it dragged out, the worse the outcome. Now, take in mind, at the very start, they wouldn't have been aware of a murder situation, right? Just assumed missing. And if missing or somewhat injured out there, could still be alive. Though, if it drags on, person could pass away. That's the mindset at the time. Hire somebody, come across Jim Terry. Was it directly on Facebook? Maybe. But was it done behind the parents' backs? Some people say so, others say it wasn't. But people are saying that Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds didn't hire Jim Terry, it was the grandparents. So you could say in a way, going behind the parents' backs, but then again, I'm sure the parents wouldn't blame the grandparents of Dylan for what they did, because none of them would have known how things would have played out down the line, right? You can't predict the future. Though it's easier to look back on now, retrospectively, because all the stuff has already happened and been in place, okay? But for the time Jim Terry spent involved in the Dylan Rounds case, although short-lived, some of the ideas presented towards the family by Jim Terry were dismissed. Okay, certain theories and claims about Dylan and, you know, who he's around and stuff led to a bit of resistance from the family, partially because it wasn't true, or the family didn't want to hear about that type of stuff, whatever it is at the end of the day. But then the idea, just a simple idea of putting cameras out there, such as on Dylan's property, Dylan's farm, trail cameras to detect and pick up on somebody returning back to the trailer to return items back. But once again, way back at the start, and I mean at the very start, because it must have been in a short space of time, right? Surely, if it's before the actual items were returned back and the suggestion was put forth first of all, no one would have been anticipating exactly as to what would happen at Dylan's farm at that moment, right? You wouldn't be expecting items to be taken and then returned back afterwards. Because of course, when people did find out about it and the story was told, whether it be by the suspect, another individual, James Brenner, or a friend of Dylan and Dylan's brother or another friend, taking the items away, taking them to the grandparents, showing them, having them cleaned down by Larry Round, supposedly, to get rid of any evidence and trace from the kids that handled it, and then returning it back to the trailer at night time, whilst Candice Cooley is left in the dark, but Justin Round supposedly knows, and Corey has direct contact with Justin, but Justin's never publicly said it, so everyone's in the dark, including Candice Cooley. Very messy, right? We can spread it out later on in this video, okay? But if you're not anticipating what's to come next, the idea of putting cameras out there may not be the first thought on your mind, or you might think, well, what's the significance of it? If Dylan Rounds is missing and it's a missing person case, what good is that going to do? What, so we put cameras up just to see if we can see Dylan scuttling around the desert? It would seem pointless. In the mindset there, in a criminal aspect, if it's kicked in already early on, oh, something really bad's happened, Dylan Rounds has been murdered, injured by somebody else, let's put cameras out there to see if we can monitor anyone's behaviour on site, such as Brenner, okay? But then again, if that really was the case, why would you want cameras to be down at Dylan's farm if the supposed happening and bad event happened at the Grainshed property? Surely you'd want cameras hidden around the Grainshed property to capture Brenner moving about and seeing what he does, you know? But it was only ever referred to as Dylan's farm. The cameras should have been put there. Maybe the cameras should have been put everywhere. Why not? Right? It might have picked up on something. over Brenner, his body language and behaviour at a time of when family weren't there or police weren't present, when they had to back off because Brenner in the early days didn't want the presence of all these people around his trailer, right? If anyone visited or left. I mean, ultimately, the cameras would have been most useful on the actual day things happened to Dylan, the 28th, right? It's kind of obvious that, but you wouldn't be anticipating it. And after it's occurred, and after the family have got down there, and at first glance, missing person case, what's the point putting cameras up? Okay? Yes, in other situations, if you're in cities and towns, you might look back at CCTV footage of where this person previously was at, where they could be at now. If there's been any recent sightings since, you'd look at CCTV footage to review it, to confirm whether it is the person or not. But a place like Luton, Utah, you haven't got that level of surveillance because it's just open, vast nature. Really no cameras at all, if not any, okay? You might have the actual trail cams in some of the mountains and ranges, right? Just like it was with the Kenny Veach case, but not say that they're in the exact area where the person went missing, right? The criminal aspect, would the family be even thinking, oh yeah, let's have cameras here and there to see if anyone returns back the murder weapon or returns back certain items that were missing, the key fob and gun. I don't think the family would be anticipating items like that to return back. Why return? It's not exactly returning back to the scene of the crime if the crime took place at the Grangeshed property and the items are being returned back to Dylan's farm. So you're not really returning back to the scene of the crime, so it doesn't fall under that bracket. But returning back to a sensitive area, okay? Potentially incriminating yourself, risking your own life in that instance, right? Under that concept of how things supposedly played out. Hold with me, okay? Whoever it may be, returning back, daytime, nighttime, risky. Wouldn't be expected by many out there. Was it anticipated by Jim Terry though? I think that maybe it's been worded by Jim Terry previously that he had an idea that things would be returned back to the trailer before they actually were returned back to the trailer. And that's why he kept saying, I told you so, I told you so. You were supposed to put the cameras out there. You should have believed me at the time. Look at what it could have picked up and captured. But before the items were returned back or noticed, why would you even be anticipating things to be returned back, right? If it's the least likely thing to happen, you probably just wouldn't be thinking of it. Sometimes a person may think or know that something's going to happen next, but that tends to be because they're involved in the crime themselves. You get what I'm saying? It sounds a little bit dodgy, that, but it's like when it comes to the death of people out there, when it comes to the murder cases, isn't it like worded or quoted as a person that's been taken out of this world was by a friend, a family member, or someone close to that individual who knew them? That's what it tends to be. I don't know if that applies to all countries or just the US, but I'm sure I heard it worded something like that. And I guess in Dylan's case, well, Brenner knows Dylan, Dylan knows Brenner, and vice versa with some of the others in the area of Luton. So there's that just a little factor to take in mind. But returning back to the camera situation, as a missing person, you'd only look at camera footage when you're looking back at where they last were at and where they could be at now if there was any reported sightings. But none of those really happened because there's no cameras, first of all. And second of all, it was kind of a mystery as to where Dylan then went. And as for beforehand, the stories were told already. And that was already backed up by like the odd receipt from Montello. So footage wasn't really required there. There was other forms of evidence, right? I said, the whole usage of surveillance camera footage can be very important at documenting what previously happened, what currently happened, and what could happen in the future, right? If anyone misbehaves or does anything out of the blue, anything strange, any changes, any conversations caught on camera, unknown to the people on site where there's a camera placed somewhere, it can reveal stuff, right? So maybe just the default idea of something bad's gone down here, let's just put cameras up because there's no cameras to begin with. I'd understand it from that point of view if it was Jim Terry saying that, right? Because other times in other places where there are cameras, you don't have to think about, right, let's set up some kind of surveillance system and track and monitor what happens next. There's already cameras about. You don't have to think of that. But when you're out in the open, maybe it's worth doing so. Though, you wouldn't have that same line of thought though, would you? If it was in the middle of a jungle or in the middle of a desert where there was no trailers or anybody living nearby. If it was like a hiking spot, you know, not even that popular. Kind of like the Kenny Veach case. In the Kenny Veach case, someone's gone missing, right? Presumed out there, presumed dead by most. Some suicide, okay? People have referred to, are there any cameras out there? Could we look at them? Yes, no, kind of unknown of, and some cameras may not be in the right area or direction. But I've not seen any points mentioned by anyone saying we need to install cameras out there. Never. So why would there be a factor for installing cameras at Dylan's place of living, Dylan's farm, when Dylan's farm isn't where he lives, technically speaking, because he only is there when he needs to work. So it's not like a consistent place of living. But somewhere like the Grainshed property where Brenner lives and stays there before and during Dylan's disappearance and after, you'd think that would be the area. Though, if you got an idea of Brenner, or that there's people nearby to another property, another site, who knows, there's a 5 mile distance, you might be thinking, well, that place is unmanned, nobody down there, no one living there. So that's where we put the cameras, because if anyone comes on down, opportunistic behaviour, for whatever reason, stealing stuff, because Dylan's no longer around, then it could take place. But then that would lead me to my next question. Well, what about all the other times beforehand? When Dylan rounds, because he doesn't live there all the time, Dylan rounds moving about place to place, from farm to farm, custom farm work, visiting family, and going further afar. Okay, takes his truck with him, his pickup Ford F-150 to get about. But does he take his trailer with him too? Or does he live in whatever trailers or accommodation is present wherever he's going? Does anyone know that? Because take in mind, there are 2 trailers at Dylan's farm property. So even before Dylan's death, before Dylan's disappearance, right? When Dylan Rounds was doing custom farm work for about 6 weeks and he was out of the area of Lucerne, or at least from his farm, he wasn't there. He only returned back to his farm the, 27th or so? 27th of May 2022. So all before that, for the previous 6 weeks, Dylan not being present at his farm, were his trailers on site at the time though? That's my question to you. If anyone can answer, list it down below. And the next question would be, okay, if one of his trailers wasn't there because it's the one he lives in and he uses it as a mobile home for when he's doing custom farm work elsewhere, I get that. What about his second trailer? The storage one. You know, what's in that storage trailer then? Bits of junk, items, equipment, opportunistic behaviour. Anyone could go on down, break in and steal stuff. Yet we never heard any reports or events or gossip of that in the past, have we? So is it really like a gold mine of opportunities down there, yes or no? Because if not, there wouldn't be a need to put cameras down there to see if anyone goes down to steal stuff in the first place. If there was many chances in the past, and especially during the time of when Dylan Rounds wasn't even down there for 6 weeks, when someone could have gone down, there was no cameras, there was no worry, and if there was the odd trailer laying about, you could take something from there. But then maybe the argument would be, well, Dylan Rounds would get back, you know, go to his place, check about, realise things are missing, and then call certain people out. But where would the proof be? There wouldn't be. Obviously, if you had cameras, there could be proof there. There's still little motives, but if there wasn't precaution or surveillance used back then why now? Why after the situation with Dylan, when it's too late, right? I guess it's just early on in the case, right? Grasping at straws, trying to get any form of evidence, what you can, and if a certain individual has a certain procedure and has in the past implemented or suggested the use of surveillance elsewhere and it's worked, then I can understand the motivation and passion behind suggesting it to the parents. You need to put cameras out there such as here or there because it's worked in the past for cases I've been on. If there was a bit of passion there behind it and it has been successful elsewhere, then it would make sense. But I'm not quite sure about that area at least. If you want to fill it in down below, you can do so down below. I said we do have like photos and imageries, and can refer back to that when we talk about the gun and key fob. Okay, welcome to those that may have joined a bit later. For the full backstory, be sure to rewind back to the beginning, okay? Because I'm just going through this bit by bit to make sense of it, okay? The theme and purpose of this video is to highlight the significance of, on the hypothesis that if cameras were installed and that the parents supposedly listened to Jim Terry's idea, would it have led to Dylan being found by now? Yes or no? Would it have led to another suspect being found out? Yes or no? And being in the same situation as Brenner, as we see. That's what we're looking at today. So, not the first time I've done something like this, especially when it comes to Jim Terry. Before we move on any further, just a brief little retrospective look. So, when Jim Terry had the breaking news to shock everyone, which was 2021? At time, obviously before Dylan's disappearance and stuff, where Dylan, with his friends, got pulled over by police, and Dylan had to comply, and he looked a bit nervous, his body language, but went along with it. Okay, got in a bit of trouble with littering beforehand, and someone called in, police catched up with him, whatever, right? And what was the whole purpose and aim by that? Jim Terry really hyping it up, the audience members on Jim Terry's channel hyping it up. What did it lead to? Did it lead to Dylan being found? No. Did it lead to something to do with Brenner or Kurt directly in that video? No. All it did was highlight that Dylan got in a bit of trouble before his disappearance in the past. Did that one bit of trouble lead to him being deserving of being killed? No. So you could say research was done, footage was found of Dylan Rounds, which could be considered successful and good. But then again, Justin Rounds has posted countless videos and photos of Dylan Rounds on the Facebook page, right? Retrospectively of Dylan's past, his farming, him messing about, right? Yeah, it's not really significant or linkable to the disappearance of Dylan, but it's just looking back and acknowledging the memories of Dylan Rounds, right? As told by Justin or Candice Cooley with photos and footage of Dylan. Just like that small bit of footage where Dylan was on that Segway or something inside of that garage or shop, which I saw at the time and I thought, oh, what's going on here, right? That was the same video where Salty Pancakes said about Dylan's boot having blood on it or a spot. But I think Salty Pancakes was messing about there, and that was really early on, so it was telling signs really early on that Pancakes was all about messing around in the Dylan Rounds case, right? And not always taking it seriously, which is disappointing to see. Let me know in the chat if any of you remember that and picked up on it at the time, okay? Did I pick up on it immediately? No. But then down the line, saw a few more patterns and then noticed, of course. Just wanted to point that out. So with what Justin and Candice Cooley have done with photos and videos of Dylan, not linkable to the case, but just to acknowledge Dylan and his past, what was then the purpose of Jim Terry with that footage then of Dylan Rounds, footage of him when he was alive, but not in a good light, shining in a light of a bit of negativity because of him getting in trouble directly or, with the presence of friends. What does it highlight? What does it show? That Dylan Rounds isn't a good boy, that he's seen as a golden example of a human, but this suggests he's not. But still, digging up dirt on someone like the victim in a case separate to this apprehension by the police, encounter. What's the link? It doesn't link. Different year, different time. Brenner's not in that footage. Kurt Wadsworth's not in that footage. Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds isn't in that footage. Bibbins isn't in that footage. None of them are. Completely separate occasion. It has no link at all. No link at all. So it could be considered as good research and detective work by Jim Terry in terms of finding it in the first place, but it was ultimately a waste of time because it just doesn't link to the disappearance of Dylan. That's what I mean. Some, most, who knows how many, seemed very appreciative, high praise of Jim Terry for the research he conducted at the time and the footage he found. it's a waste of time. It doesn't link to the case. It didn't solve the case. Really, it was just a little bump in the road to put a little bit of dirt on Dylan to get maybe a reaction from the parents, maybe. That's about it. So, although you can criticise Jim Terry, you can also criticise the audience for approving of it and really hyping it up, for even though it led to not much. You know, high expectations, poor performance, didn't lead to much. Does that example link to the situation with Jim Terry advising parents to put the cameras out there? Would that have been a waste of time too? Well, that's why we're here to talk about it, okay? I want to put it all into perspective. And I think, depending on the condition, and we can get into a bit clearer later, but this is to do with the gun in the key fob specifically speaking, because really, what other time would dodgy people be going down to Dylan's farm? Before or after? Not as much. The true time of activity probably would have been on the 28th of May 2022, before cameras would have been even suggested of, before Jim Terry would have even been present down there and the family knowing of it, right? So it would have been completely invalid. But in terms of the key moment of high activity in an area like that at Dylan's place, could have been Brenner going down there and in possession of Dylan's phone, hence the phone ping down there, lasting for about 30 minutes at Dylan's farm, and then going back to Brenner's trailer, right? Was that to take items away? Maybe. Opportunistic behaviour? Possibly. At that time, that moment. The only other time of significance, I guess, which has been noted and recorded and suggested that, was it the first and the second, or the second and the third, when the gun and key fob was returned in a certain order, one followed by the other, right? The 31st of May 2022, the hostage situation, the false call by Kurt Wadsworth, a diversion tactic, some kind of decoy to get police and family away from there, down to Montello, maybe. But it was the following day and the day after when the gun and key fob was returned. So it wasn't much of a decoy if the next day people ended up returning back to the place of interest and leaving Montello. Unless it gave a bit of opening and breathing space for anybody in Lucin, who's a suspect at the time, to breathe a bit and think things out and meet up without having to be in the presence of the police or being watched by any others out there at that point, right? But 1st, 2nd of May, 1st, 2nd of June, right? That had been really the only other time, really early on, where cameras could have been implemented and used at that point. Past that point, possibly pointless, because the items would have supposedly been already returned back by then. So there's a very narrow window, you could argue, a very narrow window in which cameras needed to be installed and used. For that short space of time, maybe there wasn't enough decision making. I mean, the only other question I would ask out there would be, if the family, the parents, reflected back on it now with what they supposedly know, do they regret themselves not having cameras put out there, right? I mean, on one side of it, you could say you can't expect these people to come up with all the ideas on the spot right at the beginning, because a lot's going on, a lot's rushing through their head, all kinds of thoughts and worry. But then again, with third-party help and a presence who can think a bit more clearly or think of other alternative ideas, well, that can help lighten the load. But in, I guess, the state of mind the parents were in at the time, they might have not been thinking the true significance of cameras being out there, hence why they denied it. And just to highlight, when it comes to examples of denying or rejecting ideas and suggestions, it's not the first time. I'm just saying this to, demonstrate balance. So, okay, maybe right at the beginning, the family, or the parents at least, rejected and denied the idea by Jim Terry put forward of having cameras out there. It wasn't just that. No particular order, let me just acknowledge. At a later point, right, the whole concept of Walt and Michelle on the 28th of May, okay, so beforehand, noticing that truck after 3 p.m. leaving Grangeshed property and passing by them. A little bit suspicious and odd. After them trying to report it to the police, LE, and even FBI, it was kind of just ignored and forgotten about. It kind of went to waste. A very important possible lead, right? All on that same day and that area. Why would someone go down there? And why weren't they questioned afterwards? That's in its own right a bit of a mystery. You get what I'm saying? But for the police and FBI to just turn it down as well and turn their head the other way, or not even like proceed to go into it or even investigate, it's disappointing. So that's when the likes of, I think, Weezer, a Montello local or so, stepped up and directly reached out to Candice Cooley in the early days to inform her about that truck leaving Grangeshed property. What did Candice Cooley do? Kind of shrugged it off the shoulder. Yeah, oh well. That's disappointing as well, right? Because, you know, at the time you're looking for any form of opportunity in getting evidence, intel, sightings, reports, whatever it may be, anything that can be of use and relevance to the case. Well, that truck leaving the area on that day of Dylan's death, I'd say very important. And someone not exactly from the area, because not in Lucin, but near to, close to the Montello place, going out of their way to reach out to Candice Cooley about it and it being shrugged off. So it shows it's not just the first time, right? And then the only other moment I can remember in terms of shrugging stuff off was a time where one person from YouTube, an audience member, reached out to Candice Cooley about relating to losing a child, not a child, their son or daughter or something, and that user, the viewer, got blocked by Candice Cooley or blocked on the Facebook page by them just for relating. Don't know what that was about. And that was just told by the side of the person that got blocked, okay? Not by the other side who were blocked, right? So it could be considered one-sided, but that's just how the story was put out there. But then the only other time, by a genuine person, such as Glorin Dellin, okay? And this is kind of more recent, not quite, but a bit more recent compared to the other two examples. During the time of Brenner's court hearings, you know, the court hearings where it started going underway, not the delayed ones, but the ones that actually took place. We can't remember which date it was, but on one of them, Glorin Dellin was present. And after the court hearing, Glorin Dellin supposedly approached Candice Cooley and tried asking her, you know, is there anything I can do, anything to help? I think Glorin Dellin had some ideas and important suggestions to help the family in some way, but Glorin Dellin got blanked, ignored, and that was it. So there's been a few rejections, right, by the parents' point of view, when things have been suggested, put out there, and it's been, no, we don't want to hear about it. No, I don't think it's a good idea. And let's not forget the other one, right? Before the hearing, before Glorin Dellin's encounter with Candice Cooley. What about the supposed offer in which Breno was willing to open up and reveal the location of where Dylan Rounds' remains are at, and yet Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds rejected that offer, that opportunity. They turned it down, made it harder on themselves. If that's how it truly went. You get what I'm saying? So first of all, you got Jim Terry saying, let's put cameras out there in that area. It might capture something. From the parents' point of view, no, we're not going to do that. No. And then just so happens the gun and key fobs returned back. But is there any footage to show or prove who did it? No. Well, that's a shame, isn't it? Missed opportunity. Then you've got Weezer reaching out to the parents about the truck leaving the Grangeshed property on the day of Dylan's death, 3 p.m. afterwards. Reaching out. Candice Cooley? Nah, whatever. That could have been a new lead. That could have been Dylan in the truck being transported elsewhere. You never know. All kinds of dark possibilities, right? But it's been shrugged off. What if Dylan Rounds never found? And that it was something to do with that truck on that day. That could hold the answers, but with it being turned down and not pursued, followed up on, neither by the police as well, let's acknowledge that it's not just one-sided, there might not ever be an answer if it all comes down to that truck being the key to solving the case, right? Then the opportunity of finding Dylan earlier, sooner than later. No, we're not going to take that offer by Brenner. No, we're going to find them ourselves, making it harder on yourselves. So, and then when Glorindalen stepped in later to offer some suggestions or form of help, no, we don't need it. So, depending how you look at the theme of whether it be both Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, or more so Candice Cooley, depends which way you look at it. Arguably, there's been moments where the parents have turned down opportunities to make it easier on the case, easier or potentially increasing the chances of solving the case sooner than later. But by turning those chances down, it's made the case a little bit more difficult. Does that make sense to you? Would you agree there? So how much more difficult has the case been made as the result of parents turning down the opportunity of Jim Terry's suggestion with the camera? You know, what would it have led to if it was successfully implemented? Would the case have been solved by now? Would Dylan Rounds have been found? Would it have highlighted another suspect or person responsible? That's what we need to try and understand. And the only way to really understand it is by using an example of an actual event that supposedly happened. An actual event that supposedly happened doesn't quite sound right in terms of language. A supposed event which went down, supposedly. Let's just use that word for now. On what, 1st, 2nd of June 2022, gun, key fob. Oh, we're going round and round in circles. Maybe we are. But that's the example to apply to the usage of surveillance. If it was implemented, what would it have revealed? And then what would it have led to? That's why we're doing this analysis and using this example, so then I can give you my thoughts and you can share yours too. So with that being said, let's transition on to set the scene of the place where the cameras were supposed to be put and what could have been captured. So here we are with some of the images. Luckily, I was able to get a different angle of the trailer, which shows the other one in the background. I do remember some people in the comment section at one point saying, can we see photos of the other trailer? But I always forgot, you know, I actually had a different angle. But I found it now, so we can put that into the conversation today. But as you see on screen, Dylan's trailer at Dylan's farm. Now, this is actually by Fox 13 News, this screenshot, this photo taken, okay? As for this one, it was passed around. I think it appeared on Tyler Fellis' channel, appeared on No Thanks' channel. Jim Terry is the one that claims to be the one that distributed it in the first place, saying, you should all be thanking me, but it wasn't Jim Terry that took the photos in the first place. So it was still kind of third party. Jim Terry wasn't the one to take the photos, but people passed them on to him. Just like how other bits of research has come about, whether it be in the Dylan Rounds case or other non-related drama stuff. Okay, doing research, but being assisted by others along the way. And maybe, not guaranteed, but if anyone can fill in the blanks, sometimes what Jim Terry claiming that it's all by him, the research, but he does get assistance at times. I mean, like when it came to the research of Bibbins, you know, with the documents of course, I said at the start of the videos here and there, credit to the odd individual in the background for getting a hold of the links. Very good of them, right? I try and credit people as much as I can. Sometimes I've credited people so much that they're begging me to stop because it's getting annoying. You know, that's what the mentality is. You try and keep that consistent. Sometimes people will say, stop crediting me. It's fine, it's okay. Some people don't always want to be credited because they want to remain anonymous. But you can always say credit to the anonymous individual out there. Right? If you're dealing with certain characters though, that, you know, a certain personality, they might not always want to give credit, but they will definitely get offended when other people don't credit them, even though it's not directly their own doing. So you can see the tension and conflict, how it can originate. But this is by Fox 13 News coverage, at least from this angle and shot of the trailer from the outside. We have done an analysis of this trailer in the past, looking at the doors, the windows, the slider on the right-hand side that's supposedly been broken off. Some claim it's TV, others thinking that it is attached to the window, but then again, the size of it, and with it having a stand at the bottom, it looks more like a TV than it does as a slider. And I originally thought it was a TV before other people jumped on it. So yeah, we have looked at this up close, tried to see what's the true damage, anything that stands out, anything that's odd, has anything been altered with, right? But this time round, right? Besides this camera itself that took the footage of this trailer, what would have been the significance if a camera was actually set up around the time closer to when the case unfolded? Would it have been set at this angle, right? Angle, lighting, visibility is everything. Yes, you can have a trail camera out there, but how many are going to be installed? Are you going to have one pointing directly at the trailer, or are you going to have one pointing at the road which people drive down to get to, right? If the camera's out of place, out of position, it's not going to do it, justice. It's not going to give a true visual look at it. I mean, look at the Alex Easterling case. Although I'm in deep waters there because I've not looked into it enough, being honest, right? But that going back and forth conversations with the other people in the background about, the CCTV footage, was that Alex in the distance? And did anyone else see him, even though people were there, groups, people coming and going, and that car in the background, which seems to compare to that other car in a different photo, right? Maybe a bit of doubting, a bit of questioning, partially because such as the visibility of the car itself in the background due to that bright light from that light source on site. One camera, supposedly, of that property, nowhere else, because I've not seen any other angles. It can be very limiting, right? So if you're going to have just one camera, you need it to count and it needs to be in the right spot. And with Alex Easterling, it's good that a camera was there and present, but still, maybe it's a bit tricky to get to grips with or to visualize because of the clarity of it at times, or maybe the slight angling or the zoom level, the quality of the footage itself. Can all play a part, right? I mean, you're trying to deconstruct something and reconstruct the events as to what happened or what could happen the following day or so if there's any more activity. You want the best possible chances. And to have that, you need good camera quality and multiple cameras for the multiple angles. So, in Jim Terry's situation when he said, let's put cameras out there, how many would Jim Terry have put out there or suggested to be put out there? And from what angle exactly? One facing the trailer like what we see on screen and then one facing the road? Maybe. If it was just one camera, that might have not worked out either. So I'm just trying to lay it all out as for the different possibilities. But returning back to the gun and the key fob, right? Inside the trailer, supposedly returned back. Some said it never left, others saying it was taken, stolen, and then returned back, maybe to make it seem like nothing ever happened. And then others on the sideline suggesting, yes, was taken, yes, was returned back, but it was more innocent. So should we just explain them briefly right now? Okay. So it's been suggested that Brenner was the one that supposedly took the gun and key fob for whatever reason. Part of it could have been to dispose of Dylan rounds, such as the use of the key fob and vehicle. The gun to take as a trophy, maybe, if he's done it in the past with stealing firearms, because that's of his interest. But then later deciding to return it back, or getting somebody else like Don Hatley to return it back because there's no use for it, or it might seem suspicious if it's missing, so it's best just returning it back. And Kenneth Cully described it happened overnight time. So that'll be the next line of thought. Well, if you're going to have cameras out there at that point, you'd need it to be night vision, which I think most would be for those circumstances, and trail cameras for sure. Even though if you had night vision cameras, would the quality be good enough to pick out who these people are, right? Who are they really? The details, is it clear enough to identify an individual at night through night vision? Makes you wonder, that's a factor. So yeah, that was one of the supposed events. Gun key fob taken away by the perpetrator, then returned back later, or maybe returned back by an associate. Okay. Then later came about the strong response by general public claiming, from what others have said, that it was Dylan's friend and possibly Dylan's brother or two of Dylan's friends that went on down, younger individuals, slightly younger than Dylan, I think, went to the trailer, looked about, found gun and key fob directly in the trailer or Dylan's truck. You'd probably think more so Dylan's truck, unless it was left in the trailer for whatever reason. But taken by them, went to grandparents, show and tell, Larry decided to supposedly clean the items down so there was no fingerprints or traces to the younger individuals so they don't get caught up in all of the mess or questioned, and then returned back. What, by Larry, maybe, or by the kids? Okay. But shouldn't the kids or teenagers know better not to touch things, to be poking in places? Or, were they not thinking? That's the supposed alternative event of what happened, right? But just imagine if the cameras were set up out there in which it depicted, showing Larry or Dylan's friend or brother going to the trailer, messing about, taking items away, incriminating themselves, harming an investigation, them getting in trouble. Maybe more so a telling off or a warning. Maybe that's why they didn't want cameras out there. But then again, Ken is coolly left in the dark, not knowing of what supposedly went on out there. If the cameras were out there, that might be the only way Kenneth Cooley would have known who truly was responsible, right? What else do we have? As I said, we can look at it closer shortly if need be. That's the other trailer, a bit more zoomed out. That one over there, across the other side of the vehicle. That is supposedly the storage trailer. And my question is to you, anyone watching, what would have been in that trailer specifically? Expensive items, any valuables, money, items worth anything for scrapping? Would anyone use it as like a hoarding spot? I wonder. I don't think we saw any photos inside that trailer besides the one here, which was Dylan's living space, as you see inside. It would have been interesting to figure out what was in that storage trailer. And as I said, the earlier question I presented was, okay, maybe this trailer was taken away at times when Dylan wasn't needed at his farm because there was nothing to do or the way the weather was, or he had other jobs elsewhere and he took it with him to stay in as a form of accommodation, on the go, mobile. I'd get that. But you can only tow one trailer at a time, right? So would Dylan tow his living quarters to wherever and then make the trip all the way back to get a hold of his other trailer and tow that as well? Or would he always leave at least one behind whenever he was busy elsewhere? Does anyone know that? I wonder. Because as I said, if that storage trailer back there was left on site most of the time, then anyone could have gone into it or tried breaking in at any point before Dylan's death, right? It ain't never happened. So how much of a hotspot is this place really when it comes to stealing stuff? A sign of opportunity. You get what I'm saying? Because surely the killer must know that if it was them themselves that may have gone snooping around down here to steal things, knowing that Dylan wouldn't respond because he's not alive, they'd get away with it. But surely they would also have common sense to know that when something is radio silent, that the parents and family members from afar would get concerned and involved and come on down to check in on the place, which would then lead to them noticing things are missing. So surely the killer would have acknowledged and noted that. Hence why they never bothered in stealing in the first place way back then before Dylan's death. So really, the only real example of why there would need to be activity down here post Dylan's disappearance and death would be to return items of interest such as the gun and the key fob. Hence why we're using that example here, because it supposedly did happen, right? It's understanding who by though, and it is divided. One, possibly Brenner or Don Hatley, or the other, Dylan's friend, brother, went down there, took items away, gave them to Larry, grandparents, then returned back afterwards because they shouldn't have been taken in the first place. How much significance would those cameras installed in that area have had on that example? Would it have led to much of an outcome? And maybe some of you by now are already coming to that conclusion, and I'll give you my thoughts shortly. Is there anything else we need to look at, really? As I said, if you notice anything yourself, anything that pops out, anything that triggers a memory or a thought of what you previously mentioned in the past, which got forgotten about, feel free to reiterate it again in the comment section, right? And let me know your thoughts of that second trailer too, if there's any interest there. Okay, so I just briefly transitioned onto the maps, just to put in perspective the area of Dylan's farm property and where the cameras could have been put, right? Take in mind, as for the potential of Dylan Rounds being buried at his own place, his own farm, the family said that they dug up the main line twice, and maybe more than twice, and can definitely confirm that Dylan's not there, right? Maybe that's a level of some confidence, I guess. So the cameras wouldn't have been of much use in terms of being used for, if Dylan was disposed here. But looking at it, kind of like a crossroad, don't you think? Dylan's farm, property, in this area, right? His trailer, somewhere in this area in the middle. Apologies about the black boxes on the screen. That's Google's fault due to updates with time, okay? And there's the pond there. Obviously, the vehicles aren't present here because it's outdated satellite imagery, right? Blame Google once again. But as we saw with Bing Maps, some of the vehicles were present and the odd trailer was too. So that puts it into perspective, right? As for which trailer stays, remains, and which one goes if Dylan's out and about, right? But if cameras were installed, where would you want them, to be placed? Out of all the locations of interest. When you look down there, that's the main dirt road. You follow that down, you'll end up passing Sun Tunnels. And eventually you'll have the option to turn right, which takes you to the grain shed property somewhere over there. I'll just direct it. There you go. Follow it all the way down. Apologies if things don't load in. Once again, as you know, Google to blame. Sun Tunnels on the left, as I said. Go straight on. It's as if you're going to go on the route to Lucin Hill, which you see over that way, and if you was to go to possibly Montello. Going south down there would end up taking you by the side of one of the salt lakes or so, also in parallel to Pilot Peak, and eventually as if you was to go down to West Wendover and Wendover itself. But took a right here, direct trip to the grain shed property over there, okay? So that being in mind, this is a crossroad. You could say at a crossroad like this, where most of the traffic could be passing through possibly, or at least by the locals, a camera should have been put somewhere here. But that wasn't even suggested, was it? So, disappointing, but, we're talking about cameras, we talk about the true areas which should have been put about. So, this main dirt road to get down to Dylan's farm would have been used, mainly, right, to get to here. But if you look onwards, there appears to be a light-coloured dirt path which you follow the tracks. Is it an actual dirt road or more of a man-made one? And a rough and rugged one, to say the least? Because you follow it down and the tracks end up being lost, don't they? You can't see it unless it's in parallel and you follow that line all the way down. Is that even a road? A dirt road? It's hard to tell. But then it brings you out to here in the middle of nowhere. So it doesn't really go anywhere, does it? So maybe you wouldn't need a camera facing down that way. Unless it was going away to then dispose of the body in that direction. But I'd say, okay, you got a dirt road there, if you follow it. And I think over there is Pigeon Mountains, not to be confused with Little Pigeon Mountains. But once again, the track marks kind of fade out, don't they? Like another crossroad there, like man-made. Don't know where this really goes to. It kind of fades out again, hard to trace. It might link onto that dirt. I know that's train tracks. Forget that. But you see what I'm saying? Like it's like a crossroad at Dylan's farm. So it's trying to determine what would be the best angle to have cameras if you did choose that. Ideally, you'd probably want a camera directly facing down that way, where someone could be coming down from, the grain shed property. Kind of like how Dylan Rounds would if he finished at the grain shed property. Kind of like how maybe Brenner did coming down here on the 28th with that phone ping occurring at a certain time after Dylan's death, and if Brenner was in possession of that phone, coming down that dirt road as you see up ahead. So that'd be, the camera should be facing west, directly down that road. That would be important. Then you'd probably suggest having a camera pointing down that way too. That's kind of south. and that's pointing down to Little Pigeon Mountains where those campers were at who acted as witnesses on the 27th night time when they saw that tractor lights were on at Dylan's farm, you remember. And also down that way, just before Little Pigeon Mountains, is that smaller pond. I don't know if that's of interest still or not. So you want a camera west, south, pushing it maybe east. Of course, no harm having one facing north. And then you'd probably ideally want one kind of, what should we say, north. You would want one kind of northwest, so in between this split there, facing that way. I can't really get closer to the ground, it'll flip out. Kind of facing that way, northwest, so it's pointing towards the trailers as they're lined up at a correct angle, just to make sure that it shows the doorway and if anyone was to walk into the trailer and walk out. So they're the angles, in my opinion, as to where they should have been placed. And obviously you'd need a range of cameras. Would they be easy to set up and stuff? Maybe. Would they be disguisable enough? That would be the next factor, because if anyone was coming on down to return anything or to mess about, if they saw cameras, it would probably hightail out of there and it might blow the cover. Of course, this would be pointless now as for positions of cameras, but I just wanted to give a retrospective look on my thoughts on the positioning, right? So we're taking all that into mind. Where does that leave us at? Well, it leaves us at the point where I give you my conclusion and analysis on the matter. And I would say, to an extent, the significance of Jim Terry's, idea of putting cameras out there could fall flat, just like Jim Terry's research in finding that footage of Dylan being pulled over by police. That's what I would say. And some people might get triggered by it, but I'm just going to explain to you my train of thought as to why I think it might have been overhyped having cameras out there. I feel it might have not been enough to lead to Dylan being found, nowhere near. And it probably wouldn't have led to enough in full-on incriminating evidence. And I'll try and explain it, okay? It could have led to further complications, if one of the events occurred. So, tying in with that event, what we refer to, gun and key fob, you've got a camera there or multiple, and it depicts the likes of Brenner returning items back. What significance is there in that? Maybe earlier on would have been further proof to say, there's your man, that's the one responsible, and then he gets taken in, arrested earlier, maybe. But let's just remember, where is Brenner right now? Well, he's been apprehended by police ever since. He's not getting out. Okay, unrelated charges, but as of March 3rd, 2023 onwards, he was charged with the murder and desecration of Dylan Rounds. A part of justice has already been served. Candice Cooley treated that as a win. The next part is trying to find the remains, right? So what I'm saying is, if the camera portrayed and captured Brenner returning items back at a point in time, as a form of evidence, it would have been useful, but it wouldn't have been groundbreaking, because without that captured footage, Brenner was already charged. Not already, Brenner was charged in the end, regardless of having cameras set up at the property. So without that evidence, without that footage, without that idea of Jim Terry, Brenner still would have been charged regardless. Does that make sense to you? So that would make the significance of having cameras out there less significant and not as important as Jim Terry has claimed on that basis. Okay then. There's also a but as well before we go any further. Even if the cameras did depict someone like Brenner taking... Well, actually, hold on. Let me return back to that in a second, because I need to conclude with the other alternative. Just give me a second. So, if it wasn't Brenner caught on camera, because as we described, if it was, it wouldn't have led to any other outcome, really, because Brenner still got charged in the end, so it's insignificant. But what if it was an accomplice? What if it was Brenner's friend? What happens if it was Bibbins, or if it was Don Hatley, some of those guys, and maybe somebody else too, Chase Venstra, if you want to go out and push it out there. Okay, it would have shown people besides Brenner, who would have been charged anyway, with maybe aiding and abetting, assisting, what do you call it, obstructing, getting in the way of a police investigation, assisting the criminal, the main one, which makes you just as bad, just as responsible. Like you too would get in trouble as well and arrested and charged down the line, probably. Not as much as the actual murderer, but you'd still find out on the consequences. And that footage could open up to the new leads, which you could highlight as being significant, right? This is the counterpoint, what I'm trying to get at in the eyes of other people. You know, other people would say, if you got footage out there and it captures somebody else, that's the possibility. Besides the typical Brenner, it could have depicted another criminal suspect, person of interest, assisting or getting involved themselves independently in terms of returning items back. But you know why it's limited? Because it only shows the person returning the items back. It doesn't prove that they were the ones that took the items away from the place to begin with, right? So it only tells half of a story, not complete. Would it be enough to get somebody in trouble? Maybe, you know, someone decided to return the items back instead of returning them to the police or to the family in acknowledgement. It could be considered a bit suspicious and odd, but it just doesn't tell the full story. So even if you had that evidence of the camera footage, it would be incomplete. It wouldn't document what happened beforehand. And it wouldn't even be possible because the idea of having this and that there could only have occurred after Dylan's disappearance, not on the day, because it wasn't to be expected that would happen to Dylan, right? So you're only guaranteed half of the story. The other half would probably come from interrogating that person, someone like Don Hatley, if they were the one caught in the footage, or if it was Bibbins or Chase Venstra. But then it comes down to how much do they want to speak and talk? Do they want to reveal the other half of the story? Are they going to keep quiet or play it off as, I've got no role here or there, I'm not going to say anything? Are they going to be as awkward and stubborn as Brenner? Maybe. As we've seen with Bibbins, if it was Bibbins, well, Bibbins has shown resistance to the law, both outside and inside, and with those appeals and petitions and those court documents. I'm sure if he was interrogated, Bibbins would be just as awkward as Brenner and not say too much. Would there be as much of a fight? Who knows? But do you get what I'm saying? I can understand that by having footage, retrieval, something being captured of other people's behaviour, it can lead to new leads, new people of interest, and then it can go from there and it might get the ball rolling. But it doesn't instantly guarantee a full story. As we said, it only tells half the story. And then the second part falls onto the person of interest, whether they want to open up more or not. And there's no guarantee there either. So you could still be left at a bit of a dead end and hit a brick wall. So you think putting cameras out there is a good idea, but it might not lead to much success in the long-term aspect. If you're claiming that another person could have been caught red-handed besides Brenner, it may have not led to much more. You get what I'm saying? And whether it be Brenner in that footage or somebody else, if they're not willing to talk and go any further, well, as for the gun and key fob itself, there's specific items which were also wiped and cleaned down by whoever. Those items couldn't be proven as for prints to link directly to them or other people in the background. And those items themselves don't directly lead to where Dylan's body is at, because obviously it hasn't yet, has it? And the vehicle truck data on Dylan's, that was lost as well. So that's another missed opportunity aside from the camera. So it's like the whole camera situation scenario is document this, document that, and then reach a dead end. Because it never happened, it's that what if, so you can say it would have been a key idea, and Jim Terry can hype it up and say, I told you so many times. But would he be telling, I told you so, if it was accepted at the time and it still led to a dead end? Or would it have been wiped off? Oh, no, it was just an idea. You get what I'm saying? I don't think it would have led to finding Dylan Rounds, right? Because up to now, nobody else has come forward or really said much, have they? And if it's just Brenner, then it all falls on Brenner. And we've seen with Brenner, he doesn't open up or talk. So That's not got anywhere. And there are any other people out there, they're not really budging, so they're probably just as awkward as Brenner. So if they did get caught up in it earlier on, they probably wouldn't have said much either. Then, I know of recent time that new DNA evidence being found, and maybe the other piece too, that could be something completely different and more significant. It's not come about yet, it's not been explained enough, so that still remains in the dark for now, at least for us, but there's still hope down the line with other things. This is a retrospective look at an action which never happened, that some, and Jim Terry claim, would have been the game changer. But I think with what we've talked about today, it wouldn't have been a game changer. Not really. But what if the example of Gunn and key fob, it wasn't a suspect, a person of interest, it was simply a family member, a friend of friend, brother, taking the stuff away to hand over, but to the family, making a mistake, then returning it back. They could get in trouble too. Probably seen as more reckless behaviour, told off, given a warning. But at least that footage would have at least documented it, and Candice Cooley would have seen it for herself, right? But would the footage have been acknowledged or told publicly? No, because I'm sure, and that might be partially why, but if it truly is true, let me just have a quick drink. If it truly is true that it was like a family-related member or a friend of Dylan's that was responsible for the gun and key fob, does it mean that they're responsible for the death of Dylan Rounds? No. But in the eyes of the law, it could be seen as disrupting a potential crime scene or a place of interest and items and evidence. But then again, the counterpoint could be, I don't think the police would give a damn anyway, right? Even if it is seen as interfering with sensitive material and potential evidence, the way the LE have been over time, I don't think they probably would even care if family members got involved too much, right? Because that trail camera and footage could have been retrieved by the family and seen it for themselves and reviewed the footage and said, oh look, there's Dylan's friend or there's Dylan's brother going on down there to take the stuff away, Colton and somebody else. Oh, they shouldn't have done that. But if Justin Rounds already knows, even without the footage, as some people have claimed, well, Justin hasn't flipped out or really said anything public. Would Candice Cooley either? Probably not. But Candice Cooley appears to be in the dark because she's always told the story as it was Brenner or somebody, well, probably Brenner, that took items and returned them. That's all we've ever heard. Justin Rounds hasn't really said it, or not as much. If Justin Rounds knows something different, but he's not told the general public either, why has he not told the general public? Wouldn't it help lighten the load and get rid of the confusion? Or is it because some of the family members feel embarrassed or feel it's not of interest to the general public to know what certain family members or friends of Dylan have done? That would make them look worse. It would damage the image, so let's not do that. Maybe. But then why would Candice Cooley still be left in the dark? Is it because certain family members like Justin can't trust her? She might talk too much. Okay, she talks too much. What would she do? What would she say? I think in that occasion, she might not because of who's involved and them being of a younger age. Hence why the likes of Dylan Round's friends in general haven't got too involved in this case publicly, because maybe they're being protected, because they might get hounded or questioned by some out there or those online. I can understand that. So there's a level of understanding there. I don't think Candice Cooley would flip out much publicly if she really knew what supposedly did happen. I think if they all got hold of the footage and found out it was the Colton or Dylan's friend both responsible, they'll probably just delete the footage or hide it or something. Yes, it could be considered a bit suspicious and a bit odd, a bit of conspiracies there, no, but I guess it's just to protect their own and to maintain focus on the Dylan Rounds case. But a mistake was made interfering with potential evidence and they didn't want it to go any further, or for those genuine people to get in trouble. They thought they found something, they wanted to share it, but should have been handled more by the police and not by them themselves. So reduced the damage. So, and would Jim Terry have found out? I don't know. You might have asked, what did you find on the footage? And the family say, no, not much. Then it would have been brushed under the rug, right? Obviously that never did happen in terms of that outcome playing out, but still, even if it did, family probably would have swept it under the rug as a silly mistake made by the likes of Colton or Dylan's friend, right? And we wouldn't really hear any more about it. Would you hear about the agenda being pushed about Brenner, someone like Brenner returning items back? No, you probably wouldn't. That probably would go silent. But still, gun key fob or not, if there is alternative evidence to portray Brenner being responsible, which there is, that's all that really matters at the end of the day, right? But to be honest, we're talking about surveillance, we're talking about cameras, Jim Terry really pushing that idea that it should have took place way back at the start. And yet, even though that didn't happen, what do we end up with as an alternative? Well, Dylan's Round's phone being found, that digital forensic deep dive done on it, analysis, deep forensic analysis, in which that time-lapse video was retrieved, in which 7:27 a.m. on the 28th of May 2022, tying in with probably shortly after Dylan's death, depicting Brenner with a gun, blood on him, other DNA belonging to Dylan on his shirt, himself with blood on his hands and arms, cleaning a gun, tie one thing to another. You know, the timestamps and everything seems a bit dodgy, and you know, it's visual hard evidence, right? So I'd say that's probably more valuable because one, it actually did happen and it was actually retrieved, and two, I don't know, it's clearer, more visual, more applicable directly to the Dylan Rounds case, and tells a bit more of a story. I know you can argue and still say it doesn't tell the full story. Just because Brenner's got blood on him doesn't mean to say it's Dylan's blood. But then why else would Brenner have blood on him? Oh, because he was killing an animal. Do you normally kill animals on site on that property? I don't think so. I've not seen it personally. You know what I'm saying? And cleaning a gun, well, it might be just cleaning a gun because that's what he normally does or what people normally do. It's sometimes you can use evidence and then you can also combine it with coincidences of evidence. You got some evidence here, some evidence there, but right in the middle, is there enough evidence to fulfill the timeline? Not always. And I know in the eyes of some people who've got very high standards, it's not good enough. But if you just use a bit of logical thinking and a bit of common sense, as much as people will detest to think that way, you can add in some coincidences and say, well, actually, that initial timeline links with this outcome, or there's links there, so you combine it a bit closer together. Kind of links a bit more now, right? And if it's truly confirmed that Brenner on site, Dylan on site, and nobody else around, then really, the only person to have seen what could have gone down would have been Brenner, besides the others who a bit further afar. You get what I'm saying? So, ideally, or realistically speaking, even without that surveillance footage at Dylan's farm, end of the day, some form of footage was retrieved, regardless. And more relevant, on the actual day it went down. Not days after, but on the day it went down. So, all in all, I think if the CCTV or trail cam footage, if Jim Terry got his way and the family accepted it and cameras were put out there, I don't think Dylan Rounds would have been found any sooner than the situation we're already in. I think things would still be dragged out till this day. It might have sped up possibly Brenner being apprehended a bit quicker, maybe a few days sooner, but that's about it. I don't think it's as significant as Jim Terry claims it to be, right? Of course, evidence is evidence at the end of the day, but if it mainly falls onto Brenner, I'd say there's already enough evidence right now besides it, which stacks up against him. And as for evidence in other directions which could point to new leads, would it be enough anyway? No, because it wouldn't tell a strong enough story, and those that do get caught out may not open up much, so it would still fall flat on its face. That's what I'm saying. In terms of Brenner being charged with murder and desecration of Dylan Rounds, the key turning point as to why that mainly happened, besides the other bits and bobs of evidence, such as Dylan's boots and Brenner's prints being found on them, is because of that time-lapse footage on Dylan's phone in Brenner's possession at that time following the timestamps. Much more solid there. One of the main reasons directly leading to Brenner's charges down the line. I don't think surveillance footage suggested by Jim Terry would have directly led to a true arrest and true charges on somebody else or on Brenner without that time-lapse footage, right? I think if you take away if you do some like reverse engineering to put it into perspective, if you used to combine surveillance footage of the after events and then the forensic dive footage from Dylan's phone at the time of the event, which one's more significant? Let me know down below. right? If you take away the Dylan's phone and Dylan's footage, well, the footage on Dylan's phone of Brenner on the day timestamped with blood on him, take that away like it never happened, and all you can rely on is some footage of Brenner possibly returning to Dylan's trailer and putting some items in there and walking away. Yes, it could say that Brenner is responsible in some way, but it wouldn't be enough to say that Brenner is the killer. It's just that he's assisting in returning back items of interest and not handing them over to the police. So it could be considered more as Brenner is covering for someone rather than being directly involved. Though, when you do add in that footage, time-lapse one from Dylan's phone, it plays more of a pivotal role in terms of Brenner himself because it matches the day and follows with the timestamps and the location and how he appears with the blood on him, one thing leading to another. So that's why I say the Dylan's footage on the phone is probably one of the most important things in this case. And even if that surveillance footage, trail cam footage suggestions by Jim Terry occurred in the first place, that is way more insignificant to this time-lapse footage evidence. So in the end, it's still, well actually, without this time-lapse footage, in the end, you've probably been worse off if you just relied on that trail cam footage. Does that make sense to you? Hopefully. As I said, just wanted to explain it as clear as possible, give different angles, viewpoints, counterpoints, different perspectives. Leave your thoughts down below. I do also understand that this is a retrospective video, as I clearly explained at the start, and that, in the end, it never really happened. But it's also to put in mind, Jim Terry's claims about this and that, and does it really add up? Does it really meet those expectations, those claims, or is it exaggerated? And I think, at times, exaggerated from Jim Terry. Okay? It's just being honest, my thoughts. Let me know if you agree down below. If there is resistance, not much can do about it. This is a valid video. It's to do with the Dylan Brown's case, and it's looking back just like what's been done before. Same procedure. It needs to be done, it needs to be covered, and that's what I've delivered today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, you found it interesting. We'll see what happens next or what can be covered next, and yeah, I'll see you later. Goodbye, good night.